And he basically said that, under ENIC, we've had 12 managers or something in 20 years. You can't always be the manager and the players that are at fault. We've had in 20 years that they're lucky that they're lucky that the fans are not in there at the moment, in the stadium at the moment. If we lose the final and Kane hands in a transfer request, he thinks that we'll see protests. I'm not really sure. We'll see protests anyway, but that's by the by. But regarding the transfers they've spent, because he said that he's ENIC out basically, and he said he wanted us to discuss it. So I said, well, what do you want to discuss? So just talk about the transfers, talk about transfer windows, the lack of investment in transfer windows, the damage that it caused. The spending, the targeted spending. He looked at Liverpool and said, when Liverpool needed players, they went out. They knew what they needed. They needed a keeper and they needed a centre back, and they went out and bought Alisson and Van Dijk. Whereas, it's more than well known that we kind of buy profiles. We have a profile for a player and go and buy a player that fits that profile rather than specifically the player that potentially the manager is alleged to have wanted. So in those instances, he cited Jack Grealish and Bruno Fernandes and also Ruben Diaz. I don't know how much of that is speculation and how much of that is paper talk, and how much of that is actual fact that we actually wanted those players specifically. And he also wants to know how comes. Wonders why the naming rights haven't been sold yet. So a whole lot to digest. Start off.
Well, it's hard to know where to start with that, but I mean, if you look at individual points, so Jack Grealish, for example, he had already said goodbye at the Villa training ground to the other players. And the club was taken over, and they stopped the sale. I've been told that.
But they stopped the sale because the sale price was not. If we hadn't dallied around for so long and fannied about trying to get a better bargain, and just earlier in the deal. So if 28 million was what was asked, and we said rather than 28 million, we'll give you 25. And they go, okay, we'll accept 25. Then we would have had the deal earlier in the summer, and I thought the thing would not have been an issue, surely.
I'm sure I heard Grealish say the deal was done and he was on his way, but basically the new owners came in and just said, "Stop, that's not going ahead."
That's right.
Don't, they brought the money in and they kept him.
That's exactly what I've heard from Aston Villa fans myself.
From Aston, okay, from Aston Villa themselves. Aston Villa on the phone to you, Ed.
I mean, they
email me.
but my point, Lee, I think, was that the whole transfer saga, and you're right that in terms of the fact that the deal was stopped, but the whole transfer saga, like many others, took quite a long time to get to that point.
Mm-hmm. That's been a frustration for a long time.
If it hadn't taken such a long time to get to that point, but perhaps we would have
But don't you think
got the deal over the line?
I'm not defending Levy here, but what I will say about Levy is he's not a football man. So Levy can't go into the market himself and expect to pick out the right player. He relies on his manager or Steve Hitchen or whoever else to provide him with the advice to buy and sell players. So what's going on there? That's where I think our issues lie. When we had Damien Kamolian, he actually got some decent players in, didn't he? Like Berbatov. And you do have to wonder why Levy doesn't like that model, why he hasn't really followed that director of football model through. You keep hearing that he wants one, but we never seem to get one. And we seem to have this guy called Steve Hitchen that no one likes because he doesn't like transfer windows, apparently.
Well, that's a room. That's that.
Again,
yeah,
I know.
A misquoted.
It is a misquote. It is a misquote, but
I think
this is the impression. This is the impression, isn't it?
I think Levy's a strategist, And if you take his tenure as a whole, it's been good. And he's delivered on what he said, or the stadium, the training ground.
Yeah.
When he came in, we arguably had one of the managers we've loved the most for a long time, Martin Jol, took over and transformed the club.
Yeah.
We went from mid-table mediocrity, absolute dross, to European places. Slowly and steadily, we've improved in all areas.
Yeah, we have.
Including managers and the type of manager. We would not be at this position now, being able to attract, for all his faults, a manager like Jose Mourinho.
Yeah.
Everything is in place. That strategy is a long-term vision that he's had for the club. So he's done a lot of tremendous things for the club.
Yeah.
The problem is now we've reached a point where pretty much he's at the end of that cycle. Now, what does he do? It's a stick or twist thing. Does he say, right, everything I do now is geared to the on-field thing and break all of that habit of a lifetime? Because he's learned the habits of having to be frugal and buy and sell. And we can't have this play until we've done. And he's had to work under that strategy, and that's got him this far.
Yeah.
To go to that next level, which he's talking about, either needs one or two things. It's a complete change of that investment group to invest in the playing staff now. And because we've got everything there, can he do that? Will he do that? Because they are always, often diminishing returns on those. Or does he sell up? I think he would sell up if the right money was there, because he realizes that, as a custodian, he's now taken us to that point where he promised he would. And, but equally, I know he's got his faults. I think, and what we're talking about here, sometimes are dallying over deals that we've lost out on, which we should never have, with, Moutinho and people like that have been a constant pain in the backside for us all, when we should have pushed on after we had that tremendous run. And at that Christmas time, we ended up with Saha and Nelson, wasn't it, that we ended up when we could have gone on a title run at that year. There were so many missed opportunities with the playing staff. And that's how we view it, because we're emotionally engaged in what's on the field.
Doesn't that happen at most clubs, though? These things do go on elsewhere. It's just that we focus on it.
Yeah. What he's promised, he's delivered. But now, like I say, he's at a crucial point. He's stick or twist. Does he go? I think they probably do have to go.
Yeah, those are really good points. He brought Trevor Birch in to run the football side. That's what Trevor Birch was meant to be here for, and he's left, and he hasn't seemed to be replaced by anybody. And the whole idea was for Levy to concentrate on running Tottenham Hotspur PLC in all the events at the stadium, the whole shebang, and everything else he's planning to do. And I think that's what he's got to do. I think he's got to step aside from not necessarily, negotiations on transfers. I don't see any reason for that, but he's got to step aside the actual running of the club. He's got to delegate that to someone who actually knows how to run the football side. And it seems to be we've got a board of effectively 3 people. None of them are football people. And so we've got no representation at that level. So who's making these decisions on bringing managers in? Who's actually qualified to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got Steve Hitchin, who's in a level below, who's to me, I just don't think our recruitment department does a decent job when you look at other clubs like Leicester, even West Ham.
And I think a lot of that is highlighted, when people talk about Bruno Fernandes and some of the other purchases, and they've also highlighted that, a lot of, say, for example, the difference that we've missed out on, say, for example, Bruno Fernandes, for example, was because we chose to buy Jack Clarke instead. So rather than buying Jack Clarke, if you didn't buy Jack Clarke, then you had the money to put towards the money that we were offering for Fernandes, plus the little bit extra on top that would have got secured the deal.
Jack Clarke was obviously a punt, wasn't he, for the future? He's a young guy from Leeds. That's why we bought
We got
it.
the wrong Fernandes, didn't we?
We got the wrong Fernandes. Yeah. I don't know what the hell's going on there. Christ, that was a weird one.
But and the other thing I think you mentioned was about the deal for the naming rights, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I think they brought this guy in now from, is it Miami Dolphins? One of these.
Yes, they've got. Yeah, that's
and
right.
That's his task, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
like I was saying, like, strategically thinking, that's what he's doing now. That's the next thing for him. But that does worry me that all these business things, buying up more land that he's been doing recently. He's bought up the big golf course around the back of the near the club. And more properties are being bought. The guy's coming in from the NFL to secure the naming rights, and allegedly wants one of the world's biggest deals for that. Fantastic, but that doesn't deal with our immediate problem, and that's where we, and these are the people that are going to vote with their feet and not renew their season ticket. Maybe I haven't renewed mine yet, but I probably will, but
Yeah, I know.
I think
we all think that.
Interjecting here, I have to say I agree with Lee. On paper, Daniel Levy has done a really good job. I can imagine, the successes we've had, going unbeaten at White Hart Lane and all of that thing when he first took over, because we were a shambles. So he has been really successful, but it is a real crossroads now for him. And I think from a business perspective, you cannot knock him. He's fantastic. What he's managed to develop and achieve, and the vision and the finances and everything else he's done, he has done a brilliant job. But fundamentally, he's failing on probably the biggest part to us fans, which is the football club. But you said it, PLC. It doesn't give well, he does. He's a Spurs fan, but his project is PLC.
It's not a PLC now, is it? It's a private company, but yeah,
it's not about the football club. It's about the profit and loss statement. And I think personally, us fans will vote with our feet, but that is the best stadium in the world. You're telling me if I was a tourist, I wouldn't go and see Real Madrid just because I'm not a fan? I would, and I have.
But there is a fallacy about Levy. People think that he's drawing on the profits of the club, but they don't take any dividends out of the club. So the funds are building up in the club. So he's going to want to use it for something, and you'd imagine he'd
building
want to
an NFL team.
Well, maybe that's what he wants to do.
Tottenham NFL.
Yeah.
Harry Kane doesn't leave Tottenham because he signs for the NFL.
Signs for the NFL team. Brilliant! Yeah.
Not available January for a change. It's because he's actually playing NFL.
Yeah, no one saw that happening, did they? God, yeah, that would be amazing.
But I think the club has got so big for him now. He can't continue to run it the way he has been, and he needs to get the right support in around him. I think personally, I'd be very, very happy to see Ennick go. I'd be very, very interested in seeing Daniel Levy operating on a completely different, brief, because I think the brief does come from Ennick at the end of the day. He's operating.
He is Ennick. He's
exactly
a majority shareholder.
But I just feel like he'd be a bit different. I feel like he's a fan, and if the overall brief of the company wasn't about, if it wasn't an investment portfolio, if Tottenham got bought over and he bought his bit as well, and it was somewhere like Man City or Roman, I can't even say his surname, going to go on, a Roman at Chelsea, I really would be interested to see what he would operate like in that position.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Yeah, he'd probably do quite well. Maybe he will do that though. Maybe because I don't think this is necessarily about Ennick investing money. This is about Spurs making money to invest. That's what he wants to do, and
he wants a stable model that will work and make sure, because he sees himself as a custodian of the club.
Yeah,
he's got to run it in the best possible way, and there is a bit of a troubling trope that's always levelled at him, that he's this tight-fisted person that really doesn't like to spend money. I don't think that's true. Actually, we've spent a decent amount of money, but maybe not always in the right way.
Yeah, I think that's the key. Yeah,
yeah.
Maybe that's the problem. As you say, he will invest money if he considers it's the the right deal or the right thing for the club. But he's being advised, incorrectly. The people that he's got around him to tell him about